Bowman Library with a whole new middle grade book spotlight. So our theme for this week, we are taking some books that have been inspired by some classic stories. So what that means is all of our titles today, they've either been inspired by a book that's considered a classic, or maybe a folk tale or a fairy tale. What the author's done is they've taken this inspiration and they've kind of turned it into their own story. They turned it on its head. It could be told from different points of view from characters. It could be set in a different time. There could be elements of fantasy and science fiction integrated into it. So we have 6 that we're going to take a look at. So let's get started. Our first one is A Tale Dark and Grim, and this is one of my personal favorites. So this book, what it does is it combines many of the Grimm fairy tales into one action-packed retelling. Now, a lot of us know some of the Grimm fairy tales, Hansel and Gretel, we've heard some of those. But believe it or not, there are hundreds more that we have really never heard of before. And some of them can get pretty dark and creepy. And I will tell you, the author Adam Gidwitz, he does not pull any punches. So we go through this adventure with Hansel and Gretel, who start out our story being separated from their parents. The rest of the book is the adventure they take in order to be reunited with their parents. And that's going to be easier said than done. Because along the way, they're going to encounter dragons, evil kings who want to behead them. Yeah, that's a real Grimm fairy tale, to be perfectly honest. There's evil kings and magicians. There's bakers who want to eat them, and more. And they are all inspired by various Grimm fairy tales, many of which we've never heard of before. But you're going to be reading it, you're going to be like, hold it. Is this for a real fairy tale? And yeah, it is. You're going to be doing some Grimm fairy tale research after this one. It is the first in a trilogy. This is not for the faint of heart, and here's why. The actual Grimm fairy tales are not as friendly as how they're portrayed to us here in our culture. And there are some pretty gruesome scenes. There's fingers being chopped off. Yeah. So you've been warned, but I can promise you this adventure is one that's worth going on. This is A Tale Dark and Grim. Our next one is Peter and the Starcatcher. So most of us may know the story of Peter Pan. Like you may have seen the Disney movie or the movie Hook. There's been all different versions of Peter Pan. But we all kind of know the general premise. There's Peter Pan, he's the boy who never grows up. He lives on Neverland. There's always Lost Boys, there's Captain Hook, there's the mermaids, he can fly, there's Tinkerbell, the general idea. But here's the deal about this book. This is kind of like a prequel. And what I mean by that is take the story but we're going to go to the before that story. So we're going to try to figure out how did Peter Pan actually become Peter Pan? How did he end up in Neverland? Or how did Captain Hook lose his hand to that, crocodile? And more questions are answered throughout the story, which is all about good versus evil, friendship and making your own family, adventure, action. There is some fantasy in there, and knowing who you are. This is the first in a series, so there are others that will then continue to share these adventures and answer these questions. And it is one that I can promise you, I loved this book. It creates this incredible backstory for this character that we all know, and it's completely believable. If J.M. Barrie had written, had a prequel, it probably would have been like this. So I encourage you, if you love Peter Pan, pick this one up because it's going to give you ways to think about the story that you never have before. This is Peter and the Starcatchers. The actual and truthful adventures of Becky Thatcher. So in this reworking of the adventures of Tom Sawyer, the main character is not Tom Sawyer, but instead it's Becky Thatcher. And she is the troublemaker and the adventure-prone individual. And now Tom is the strict rule follower, the goody two-shoes. So their roles have been completely reversed. Becky's having a hard time at the beginning of her story as her older brother recently passed away. She is incredibly sad, she is grieving, and her mother has shut herself in her bedroom. She's kind of stopped being her mother to Becky. Her dad is the judge. He's trying to keep himself busy by working a lot, so he's not ever really home. So Becky's kind of left up to her own devices. Before he passed away, her brother encouraged her to live the most adventurous life she possibly could. So Becky decides she's gonna follow through on this promise that he made her make. So she keeps getting into mischief. She keeps getting into trouble, and soon she finds herself on this dare that she cannot pass up. The dare is she has to go steal from the widow Douglas. But when Becky goes to do so, things get completely out of control, and it ends up with the widow Douglas being accused of a crime that she did not commit. And Becky knows she didn't commit it because she was there breaking into the widow Douglas's house at the time. And it's going to be up to Becky to make everything right. This historical adventure is one that takes a classic tale and turns it on its head and makes you see like role reversal, just makes you think of this story in a completely different way. This is the actual and truthful adventures of Becky Thatcher. Reflection. So this is part of the Twisted Tale series. We have a whole ton of them. And what this series does is it takes a fairy tale or a story and kind of throws a twist in it. Like, take the story for example, this one's about the story of Mulan. We kind of know the story of Mulan, but it kind of throws a wrench into it and kind of then takes it in a totally different direction. So this one, we pick up right in the battle action. We're in the middle of the battle that seems hopeless. Mulan, she's pretending to be a boy. She's fighting for her country. They're in this regiment, and her regiment is under attack, and their captain Li Shang is mortally wounded. Mulan is told to leave him there. There's nothing they can do. He's just gonna die. She can't accept that though. She's like, there has to be something we can do. And then while she's waiting there, trying to figure something out, this spirit appears. And the spirit tells her that if she is to follow this spirit down to the underworld and go on this adventure and go on this quest, she can possibly save Li Shang's life. So Mulan agrees, and as she ventures into the underworld, it becomes apparent that this quest is going to be easier said than done. Plus, not only is Li Shang's life at risk, but if she's not successful, she's going to be trapped in the underworld forever. So if you like your retelling with a twist, complete with a journey to the underworld and some mythology, girl power, it's, all of that, you will love this adventure story in which Mulan has to depend entirely on herself in order for both she and Li Shang to survive. This is Reflection. This is Frankenstein, and here's why I brought this one in. Because we have a ton of graphic novels that take classic stories and they interpret them in graphic novel form. May not be a complete retelling, but it kind of totally changes your perspective on it. So for example, this one's about Frankenstein. So if you don't know the story, Dr. Frankenstein, he has this idea, he has this creation he wants to make, that he wants to bring life back to something that is without life. So what he does is he goes finds this dead body, he does these experiments, and he creates this monster. So, and it just goes from there. But we have a ton of these as well. If you venture over to our graphic novel section, there are a ton of other retelling stories told in graphic novel format. Not just Frankenstein. There's Dracula, there's Alice in Wonderland. There's so many, I can't even name them all. So this is Frankenstein graphic novel version, but there are others over there as well. And our last one for this week is The Last Musketeer. So Greg is visiting Paris with his parents in hopes that they can sell some of their family heirlooms to the Louvre, the famous museum that's there in Paris. The problem is that all of these used to belong to Greg's grandfather, and before he passed away, he gave them all this dire warning that they are not to bring these items back to France because if they do, something bad is going to happen. Naturally, Greg's parents don't believe his grandfather, so they decide they're still going to take these to Paris and they're going to do what they want. And when they are there, things get out of hand. They're in the museum, they literally get into this giant scuffle, and before they know it, Greg, his parents, the museum worker that's there, they literally fall into a painting. And what I mean is they literally go into this painting and they realize, they wake up that it is the year 1615. They are no longer in the present time. They're 1615 in what is now Paris, France, and Greg's parents are quickly arrested. Greg runs away, and he's in this place completely by himself, no idea what is going on. Needing to rescue his parents, though, Greg starts to formulate this plan. Before he knows it, throughout his adventure, he finds himself making new friends, he becomes a musketeer, and he sets off on this quest that he never thought possible. This time-traveling retelling of the Three Musketeers is the first in a non-stop trilogy, which will leave you turning pages as fast as you can. Again, like we took this retelling, we've added some time travel, some science fiction, some fantasy, some adventure. We have The Last Musketeer. So these are just 6 of the books that we have here at the library in our collection that are inspired, that they're retellings by these classic stories. So I encourage you to come on out and check out one of these. We do have others if there's something specific you're looking for. Or maybe you would even be inspired to read some of the classic versions that inspired some of these awesome stories. So I encourage you to come on out. We will help you find whatever book it is you're looking for. That's what we're here for. So I hope you tune back next week. We have a whole new middle grade book spotlight, and I hope you have a great week.